7 words changed everything. Not 7 ideas, not 7 inventions. 7 words, and the moment each one entered human language, the world shifted in a way it could never shift back. You use most of these words every single day. You say them without thinking. But if you trace each one back to the moment it first appeared in human thought, you find something strange, something almost unsettling, because each of these words did not just describe a new reality. Each one created a new reality inside the human mind, and then outside it in the physical world. Linguist and cognitive scientist Lera Boroditsky has spent decades studying how language shapes the way you perceive time, space, color, and causality. Her research at Stanford found that the language you speak doesn't just reflect how you think. It determines what thoughts are even possible for you. The words available to you set the outer boundary of your inner world. So what happens when a word appears that had never existed before? The first word is one you have said 1,000 times this week. That word is tomorrow. Think about what tomorrow actually means. It means a day that does not exist yet. It means a moment in time that is real enough to plan for, real enough to fear, real enough to promise something inside of it, but a moment that has not arrived and may never arrive for you personally. Before your ancestors had this word, there was only now. There was only the immediate moment, the hunger in front of them, the animal moving through the grass, the fire that needed feeding. Cognitive archaeologist Thomas Suddendorf at the University of Queensland has studied what he calls mental time travel, the ability to project your mind into a future that hasn't happened. He argues this is one of the defining features of the human mind. And it did not come from nowhere. It came from language. The moment your ancestors could say tomorrow, they could hold a future moment in their minds like an object, turn it around, inspect it, plan inside of it. That single word created agriculture. It created saving. It created the very concept of working now for a reward that will come later. Without tomorrow, your ancestors could not have planted a seed. Without that word, civilization does not exist. The second word is one that feels even more ordinary. Why? Why is the question underneath every question? It is the word that refused to accept the world as it was. Before why existed as a concept sturdy enough to be spoken aloud, the world simply was what it was. Rain fell, animals died, seasons changed. There was no demand for an explanation. There was only experience. The moment why became sayable, the moment a human could point at the world and demand that it justify itself, something broke open. Philosopher of science, Karl Popper argued that science itself is nothing more than a disciplined, systematic way of asking why. Every laboratory on Earth, every equation ever written, every vaccine ever developed traces back to this single act. One ancient human refusing to accept an event without an explanation. Why is the word that created curiosity as a force rather than just a sensation? It turned looking into investigating. It turned seeing into understanding. The third word is a word you use without realizing how philosophically radical it is. That word is I, not just the sensation of being yourself. Not just existing inside your own body. The word I, the ability to refer to yourself as a singular, bounded, nameable entity, was not always a given. Psychologist Julian Jaynes at Princeton proposed in his landmark 1976 work that ancient humans may not have experienced a unified self the way you do. His research suggested that self-awareness, as you know it, may have required language to come into existence. The word I gave your ancestors permission to stand apart from the world and observe it. Before there was only the experience of being inside everything, part of the tribe, part of the forest, part of the season. The self was not separate. It was continuous with everything around it. The moment a human could say I, they drew a line around themselves. They became a subject in a world of objects. And from that line, from that single first-person pronoun, came law, responsibility, guilt, pride, individual ambition, art, autobiography, and every story ever told about a single person's journey through a difficult world. The fourth word is one your brain finds deeply uncomfortable. That word is wrong, not just the feeling that something is off. The actual word, the category, the ability to take a belief or an action or an idea and place it inside a box labeled wrong. Before that word existed as a concept, there was no heresy. There was no correction. There was no progress of thought, because progress requires the ability to say that what came before was wrong and that something better has replaced it. Neuroscientist Robert Sapolsky at Stanford, in his research on the biology of human behavior, has shown that the human brain finds it physically painful to be told it is wrong. Your brain treats a threat to your belief with the same neurological alarm as a threat to your body. And yet, despite that discomfort, the word wrong may have been the single most productive word in human intellectual history. Every scientific revolution, the Earth going around the sun, the germ theory of disease, the theory of evolution, required someone to stand up and say, what we believed was wrong. That word is the engine of every correction humanity has ever made. The fifth word sounds gentle, but it is one of the most powerful forces ever put into language. That word is together. Your ancestors were not the fastest animals. They were not the strongest. They did not have the thickest skin or the sharpest teeth. What they had was the ability to coordinate, to move not just in groups, but in organized, intentional, language-mediated groups. Evolutionary biologist E.O. Wilson at Harvard spent his career studying what he called eusociality, the extreme cooperation that allows certain species to dominate their environments. He argued that language-based cooperation transformed humans from vulnerable primates into the most ecologically dominant species on Earth. The word together did something that no other animal had access to. It created shared intention. It meant not just that we are near each other, but that we are moving toward the same goal at the same time, for a reason we have agreed on. Every city ever built, every wall ever raised, every army ever organized, every harvest ever coordinated. These are all expressions of a single word that allowed your ancestors to treat cooperation not as an accident but as a choice. The sixth word is one that only exists in human language on Earth. That word is justice, not punishment, not dominance, not the rule of the strongest. Justice, the idea that there is a right outcome independent of who has the power to enforce it. That fairness exists as a concept beyond the immediate transaction. Anthropologist Christopher Boehm at USC has studied moral behavior across hundreds of hunter-gatherer societies. He found something remarkable. In nearly everyone, there existed some version of the concept of fairness, a shared sense that certain outcomes were acceptable and others were not, regardless of who was stronger. But fairness becomes justice only when it can be spoken. Only when a member of the group can point at an outcome and say not just that they dislike it, but that it is wrong in a deeper sense, that it violates something. The word justice created law. It created courts. It created the idea that the powerful can be held accountable. Every democracy on Earth, every human rights movement, every moment when a person stood up against power and refused to accept an unjust outcome, all of it traces back to this word being sayable. The seventh word is the strangest one. It is the word that should not be possible, and yet it may be the most important word in human history. That word is imagine. Imagine means to hold in your mind something that does not exist and may never exist. It means to construct a reality that has no physical form, examine it, share it with others, and then use it as a blueprint for changing the physical world. No other animal on Earth can do this in the way you can. Paleontologist Ian Tattersall at the American Museum of Natural History has argued that the great leap in human cognitive evolution, The moment your ancestors went from surviving to creating art, planning expeditions, building shelters they had never seen before, was the moment symbolic thought became fully language-mediated. The moment they could say, "Imagine if." Every building that exists was imagined before it was built. Every law was imagined before it was written. Every scientific experiment was imagined before it was run. Every comfort you have, every system that sustains your life, every invention that separates your existence from that of your earliest ancestors, it began as something that did not exist, held in a mind that was able to say the word imagine. 7 words. Tomorrow, why, I wrong, together, justice. Imagine. Each one arrived at a moment when the world could not contain what humans were becoming. Each one opened a door that could not be closed. Each one turned something formless, a feeling, a sensation, a vague pressure at the edge of consciousness, into something nameable, shareable, buildable. Lera Boroditsky put it this way in her research: the languages we speak are the lenses through which we see the world. Change the lens and you change what is visible. Add a new word and you add a new possibility to reality itself. Right now, you are inside a civilization built word by word. Every comfort you have, every right you can claim, every thought you are thinking at this moment, it was assembled from language, piece by piece, across hundreds of thousands of years. And somewhere tonight, someone is finding a word for something that has never been named before. A feeling that has always existed but has had no container. A concept that has been floating without a handle. When they say it out loud for the first time, something will shift. Just like the first time someone looked at the darkness ahead of them and said, "Tomorrow."